of the United States of America.
Next, from the Union League Club of Chicago, we hear an address from a woman who works as a futurist at the Ford Motor Company. We hear how Ford uses projections of future trends to help them design cars, market them, and even adjust their business practices in an effort to be prepared for what may happen in the future. This runs about 50 minutes.
I thank you for your attendance this morning, and I have the honor of introducing our guest speaker. Sheryl Connelly has worked for Ford Motor Company for the past 17 years, the last 9 of which has been as Global Consumer Trends and Futuring Manager. How about that for a title? As the corporate futurist, she identifies global trends which feed into functions across the entire company, including design, product development, and corporate strategy. Prior to joining the Trends team, she spent 8 years working in a variety of field positions for Ford, including wholesaling product to more than 140 dealers and assisting in the execution of new franchising agreements. Before joining Ford, she practiced law. In addition to a law degree, she holds a bachelor's degree in finance and a master's in business administration. She has been a guest lecturer at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the University of Michigan, the Wharton School of Business, and has been a featured speaker at TEDx Grand Rapids, Traverse City, and Detroit. Her viewpoints and opinions have been published in the Wall Street Journal, Reuters, Financial Times, and the BBC, to name a few. But her proudest professional accomplishment occurred when Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak told her that her ability to understand societal trends and the consumer perspective was like that of the late Steve Jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, Sheryl Connelly.
So when you made your decision to attend this breakfast this morning, you tried to predict the future. When you took the job that you have, when you started a family, when you bought the house, when you chose your career, each time you were trying to predict the future. And you may not have thought about it in those terms, but you were basing your decisions on a set of assumptions of how you thought the future was going to play out. So I obviously cannot predict the future any more than that tarot card reader could. But having some sort of future foresight is important. It's important to us as individuals. It's really important for organizations, particularly for an organization like Ford Motor Company, because it takes us 3 years to bring a vehicle to the marketplace. And so what that means is that if today, collectively, we came up with the most ingenious, innovative way to bring a car to the marketplace, by the time the rubber hit the road, our ideas might be flat. They may not be relevant anymore. They might actually be obsolete when you consider the pace of innovation. So somehow our designers, our engineers, our product developers, they have to find a way to get ahead of it. They have to try to come up with tools to anticipate the future. So what I want to share with you are 3 ways that we do it within Ford. Now, those organizations that endeavor to predict the future often use historical models. They number crunch. They have very sophisticated modeling systems that say, here are our projections of how the future will play out. And those models have a great deal of precision. And that can give an organization a very false sense of confidence. Because you see all these numbers and you say, someone clearly spent a lot of time on this. And it's so precise, it must be true. But time and time again, these predictions, these forecasts, they turn out to be generally wrong. The ways that I'm going to talk about looking at the future have absolutely no precision at all. They're subjective, they're qualitative. But time and time again, they turn out to be generally right. So the first of which is wildcard analysis. And this is kind of your doomsday thing that you'll think about. So what happens if we have a tsunami, a blizzard, some sort of catastrophic event? Things that are very unlikely to happen, they have low probability of occurring, but you have to spend some time thinking about them. Because when they do occur, they have a high probability of changing the human situation. Now, they're not always bad things. They could be good things. I mean, a wild card event was the advent of the internet. Another wild card event was the proliferation of cell phones. A more recent one would be the decoding the sequencing of the human genome. We know it is going to unlock unlimited possibilities for the future. We just don't know exactly how. The second way that we think about the future is through scenario planning. And scenario planning is interesting. It is storytelling, literally fiction. Once upon a time in the world of 2020, the world of 2050, A, B, and C happened. But the power of these stories is that they have to be a balance of plausibility and provocation. And since we won't ever be able to predict the future, what we strive to do is come up with the broadest set of possibilities that we can imagine. So let me illustrate the point. In 2004, I was given the task to come up with a set of scenarios that would help us understand what consumer demand would look like in the year 2015. And so I gathered 100 people within Ford, and we started our first workshop in Dearborn. And in an effort to be very provocative, someone said, what if or oil got to $100 a barrel? Now, I know that doesn't sound very provocative today, but in 2004, it was. Oil was trading at $35, $37 a barrel. And so we said, all right, what happens if oil gets to $100 a barrel? What would happen? What would be the global fallout? What might it mean for cars, truck sales? Well, we said new car sales would start to slow down. People would hold on to their vehicles longer. Used car sales would go up in demand. Our dealers that we sell product to each and every month, their inventories would become bloated, and so they'd stop buying. Their orders would be smaller. We'd have to slow down production. And as we slow down production, we'd place fewer orders with our suppliers. Our suppliers would be struggling because they'd have a disruption to cash flow. And many of them would go out of business. And if this went on long enough, it could have a very detrimental effect to the U.S. automotive industry. And perhaps U.S. automotive manufacturers would be on a slippery slope towards bankruptcy. Now, if that story sounds vaguely familiar, perhaps that's because we saw that play out fairly on point in 2008. But before we take any sort of hubris in our ability to forecast the future, I humbly and embarrassingly tell you that that same group of people spent a very small time talking about what if aliens were to land? What would happen to social infrastructure if religion collapsed? What kind of chaos would take place in social arenas? Now, we didn't think these were equally implausible, but I mention them because when you do scenario planning, it's about suspending your prejudices, your biases, your beliefs, and entering into a game of what if. What if this? What if that? And if you do that well enough, invariably, you will encounter things that actually happen. So our goal isn't to predict the future, but it's learning to become nimble enough to expect the unexpected. The third way that we look at scenarios, the third way that we look at the future is to look at global trends. So I have to kind of set a baseline of what I mean by a trend. The illustration I always use is denim. So denim's been around for 150 years or so, probably longer. But in the early 1900s, it was most often associated as a laborer's work uniform. It was low cost, extremely durable, highly utilitarian. In the last couple of decades, though, denim has become high fashion. It's acceptable to wear into the finest establishments. Indeed, people wear it to the office. And I have one designer friend within Ford that actually tells me that he pays more for his blue jeans than he does for his suits. So that is a manifestation of a trend in the stance that it affects a deep-rooted change in values, attitudes, and behaviors. Now, fads or shifts in style, high-rise, low-rise, bootcut, dark denim, colored denim, those are fads. They change with the season. And if we're watching those types of things, the things that we're watching are probably the wrong thing. So I'm going to share with you two collection of trends. One is kind of big picture, and we'll start with those. The first of which is population. So this is Futuring 101. There are 7 billion people on the planet today, and that number is expected to grow to 9, 10. Some people even say 11 billion people during our lifetime. So by the year 2050, a dramatic increase in the world's population. And the world has never seen this many occupants. So you get to a fundamental question. What's the carrying capacity of the planet? So E.O. Wilson, who is a Harvard-based biologist, says we don't have anything to worry. There are 3.5 billion acres of land on which to feed all of these people. And that's enough for 9, 10, even possibly 11 billion people. But on one condition. Every single one of us would have to become vegetarians. So if you think about the what-if possibilities, I ask myself, what if in the future wars aren't fought over religion? They're not fought over land, but they're fought over decisions about what type of food you consume. Could we see something like the Battle of Beef? Because according to E.O. Wilson, if we don't have everyone participate, we only have enough space to feed about 2.5 billion people. So the population's growing, but it may not feel like that to us sitting in the room. Because in most advanced, mature economies, the population is shrinking, fertility is dropping. In fact, most major economies are below replenishment rate. And what I mean by that is they're not having enough babies to offset the deaths. So population will change dramatically. So where's all this growth happening? Well, one of the things that's so worrisome is that it's going to happen in the parts of the world that are least capable of handling it. Africa, India, China. So those populations will dominate. And they'll also have economic, political, technological, environmental, and social shifts in the landscape. We'll move from a unipole world where the Western world dominates to a multipole world where you'll have multiple spheres of influence. So what about the local markets? If we're not having a lot of babies, it means that we're getting older. Our average age is rapidly accelerating. In the next couple of years, there'll be more people over 65 than under 65 throughout Europe. In the US, every 7 seconds, another person turns 65. One scientist, Aubrey de Grey, has gone on to declare that the first person to live to be 150 years of age has already been born. So your children, your grandchildren, maybe even you, will live to be 150. And so the question is, what quality of life will you have? If you're in the automotive industry, it raises another question. If I'm willing to surrender my keys at 83 when I expect to live to be 85, does that proposition change if I expect to live to be 105? What can we, as innovators, engineers, designers, do to the vehicle so that we can continue to afford the opportunity to own, operate, and manipulate a vehicle so that you have the freedom, the autonomy, and independence that comes from owning and operating your vehicle. So this directly influences some of the products that you see in the marketplace today. Things like a rear view camera, adaptive cruise control, active park assist are all designed to address the changing physiology of an older driver with reduced response time, impaired vision, limited range of motion. The UN has said that this aging of the world's population will be one of the greatest challenges that we face in our lifetime, both from a social and economic standpoint. And it comes down to what economists refer to as a dependency ratio. How many workers do you have to support your non-workers? So the working population for this is traditionally defined as 15 to 65, and that's likely to change as people postpone retirement. But using those numbers for the time being, if you look at a place like Japan, which has one of the oldest populations from a percentage standpoint, they are going to become upside down in their ratio in the coming decades. And what I mean by that is that they're going to have 108 retirees and only 100 workers to support them. Over time, this means their economic output will slow, their GDP will drop, their famously high savings rate will start to erode, and along with it, their influence in social, technological, and economic spheres will also erode, and it'll migrate somewhere else. Lots of people think it's likely to migrate to China or India, but that remains to be seen. The potential in both those markets are great, but for completely different reasons. So those are just a glimpse of our big picture, 100,000-foot view of the future. What I want to spend the balance of our time talking about are 13 trends that'll shape 2013. These are what I refer to as micro trends, things that are on the horizon, don't know how long they'll last, but they're still based in deep-rooted values, attitudes, and behaviors. Now you'll notice that I haven't talked very much about cars. I'm probably the only person in Ford that will publicly say that I'm not a car person. Cars aren't my thing, which is surprising when I work with colleagues that say things like oil runs through my veins or I bleed blue. But that's okay because Ford has more than enough subject matter expertise when it comes to the automotive industry. My job is to look outside the automotive industry at things that are shaping the landscape. So here are some of them. I won't have time for all 13, and so I would tell you that this report, for the first time ever, has been made available publicly. So I've been doing this work for almost 10 years, and usually we keep all of this hush-hush, super secret. Like I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you, sort of information. But we made a really seismic shift in our attitude, and we decided to publish a report. And this is a report because we wanted to give people a glimpse of our process. We wanted to showcase thought leadership, but we also wanted to engage people in our discussion because every year there are a handful of reports that come out that say, here are the big trends for the next year, and they rarely agree. So we just wanted to enter the discussion, see if it would enrich our insights. So the first one I want to talk about is trust is the new black. Sadly, we live in a time where there's great mistrust in business, government, and media. And what that means for us as individuals is that we know no one else is watching out for us but me. So it's incumbent on me to do more scrutiny, do greater due diligence, be more selective, excuse me, on who I decide to do business with. So if you look at this, we know that trust has dropped about 50% since 2001. And that's not surprising. All you need to do is open up a newspaper and you see reports of scandals, mismanagement, collusion, lots of things that make us weary about what we read and who we can trust. So consumers say that I want to trust a company, but if I see a company espousing values and not sticking with it, then that breaks my trust. It's really easy to lose someone's trust, but extraordinarily difficult to gain back trust. And because this has become so rare, those brands that can own the space of trustworthiness will have a distinct competitive advantage. So one example that we talk about in the book comes from Patagonia. Patagonia did something really interesting last year where they showcased a jacket with a tagline that said, "Do not buy this jacket." And it wasn't tongue-in-cheek. They were basically reminding consumers, only buy what you need. If what you have works for you, there's no reason to buy something new. And it was so popular, it resonated with their target audience aged 18 to 35. Their trust index increased 350%. Automotive saw a similar thing, at least Ford Motor Company did. When the automotive industry went to the congressional hearings back in 2008, and Ford opted not to take a government buyout, we never anticipated the public's response, which basically said, I'm really intrigued that Ford didn't need the buyout. And it made me look at your brand, your product, your portfolio closer than I ever have before. So Consumer Republic. Consumers have unlimited choice in the marketplace today. Price, quality, convenience, service, those things will always guide our decisions. But we also want to know, what are the values of the company behind it? What are the values of the product? What does it say about me when I choose to spend my money with you? And so consumers are more and more aware that how they spend their money, where they spend their money, can shape a corporate agenda. So it's not just the power of the wallet, where customers are saying about 65% feel like that they can, monitor corporate behavior, but it's also social media. So these things are changing. So Chris was giving me some recent examples, and he talked about Gatorade and a 15-year-old girl who was able to petition Gatorade to remove an ingredient that she found unhealthy. She thought that it wasn't in keeping with the brand. She got out 200 people to sign a petition, and Gatorade responded and said, okay, we'll do it. Another 22-year-old did the same thing similar with Bank of America. There was a policy. They went out, collected 300,000 signatures, and got Bank of America to listen. So what's fundamentally different is that there's no longer a monologue between a company and its consumers. There's a dialogue. It goes two ways. So Help Me Help Myself is one of my favorite trends out of the 13. And it's basically taking the idea of information being quite ubiquitous and using that information to set goals that are more meaningful for us. Now, people will tell you that 80% of them say that I am more likely to achieve my goal if I discuss it with friends and family. It increases my accountability. So what we're trying to do is give people the opportunity to have the feedback, the information that they need so they can continue to achieve their goals. I'd like to talk about the example of working out on a treadmill. So on the rare occasions that I find myself on a treadmill, I'm always intrigued by how long I've been on the treadmill, what distance I've gone, at what speed, and most critically, how many calories did I burn? Because it takes something that's intangible and quantifies it. That feedback loop reinforces the behavior. So there is actually this really great program for those gym rats in the room through GymPack. And so in January, they have this influx of people that sign up for gym membership, and by February, most of us don't even remember where the gym is located anymore. But GymPack has this organization where if you set your goals, and if you fail to meet your goals, they'll charge you $5 for each missed visit to the gym. And those people who engage in it say it makes a huge difference. 80% of people say that they are more likely to commit to the workouts because they have that carrot and the stick. So when we think about things like climate change, carbon footprint, one of the things that scientists tell us is the reason that society as a whole has been slow to act is because it doesn't trigger the fight or flight instinct within people. It's an invisible threat. And those who want to do something feel like, I'm not sure it's making a difference. It's that same thing about running on a treadmill and not getting any feedback back. So Ford Motor Company did something with our hybrid vehicles in terms of giving a feedback loop. And so this is a picture of our instrument panel. And to the right, you see some butterflies. And so what we do is that, inspired by kind of the gaming culture, is that the more green you drive, the more reward you see on your screen in the form of leaves, butterflies, cherry blossoms. And then you can track that information, actually download it and brag to your friends through social media. We have other things like, let's see, we have a brake coaching. So we have regenerative brakes that take the energy and put it back into the vehicle. And so we can give you constant real-time feedback about how green your driving is. In GPS today, you have your fastest route and you have your shortest route. Well, we also offer your greenest route for those people who want to take the route that is least likely to consume fuel. So our next one is post-green. In my time with Ford, we've been talking about green forever, easily over a decade. It started out talking about green action, and we were saying that things that had once been fringe issues were working their way to the mainstream. Concerns over the environment, human rights, those things had become very topical. And even if you didn't jump on the green bandwagon, it was hard to ignore. Over time, we evolved into something called ethical consumption, and that is people using the products and the services they have at their fingertips to make a statement, to be a projection of who they are and how they want it to be seen. But post-green is our next evolution. And it basically says that whether or not you consider yourself to be green, the obstacles to going green have become so minimum that you almost feel guilty. You feel irresponsible when you don't take part in the green movement. And so most people actually tell you that they feel good about themselves. In fact, 86% of people would say, I actually feel better about myself when I do things like recycling, when I play, a part. So Ford looked at this and we said, well, how can we change this and make it easier for people to take part in the green movement? So hybrids have been around for a long time. Plug-in electrics are on the horizon, and people are saying, I want to do that, but it's really new and I'm not sure it's for me. And so we partnered recently with, Whirlpool, Sun Labs, Nest, and a bunch of organizations that said, if we have plug-in hybrid vehicles that go into your garage, they're going to be the biggest drain on your energy resource. And who else is worried about how much energy you consume? Well, appliance companies are, Sun Labs, which does the power roof lights. And so we collectively came together with the system and said, here's how we can work with local utilities. Georgia Tech did some modeling for us and said, we will do real-time monitoring of what's the peak and off-peak times for charging. And so when you plug in your car, we won't charge it if it's during the high peak times. We'll wait till the rates are down to their lowest, and that's when we'll charge. Well, the people that have put this together that said that collectively, if we can get every home in the U.S. to implement this program, it'll be like taking 3 states off the grid. California, New York, and Texas. So we'll save 32 million homes off the grid. Huge implications in terms of energy output. So those are just a glimpse of some of the trends that we're looking at, some big picture macro trends way out in the future, some more near-term micro trends. But these are the discussions that we have inside of Ford to spur innovation, to start discussions about how we might be on the cutting edge of innovation. So thank you for your time. I think we have a few minutes for Q&A.
And I have this wireless mic. If you have a question for Sheryl, if you just raise your hand and I'll approach you. So I'll hold the mic. You just state your name and your question.
John Burgum, member of the club. What you've outlined here is fantastic, and I love listening to the way you think, but what are your competitors doing?
So I'm not exactly sure what our competitors are doing. Since I don't pay that much attention to automotive, I'm not watching automotive. And that's actually probably a good thing, because when you consider the pace of innovation right now, our competitors are not just going to be automotive makers. I mean, look at Google. Google's trying to develop their own car. So this type of work makes sure that we look across the horizon. We look at different categories, unlikely partnerships, unlikely competitors. I do believe that there are a handful of other futurist type jobs within automotive. I think General Motors has something like it. Toyota does. I think their approach to work is slightly different. Our work is a little bit more abstract to the extent that we have the freedom not to look at automotive, and most of those are doing a lot of competitive analysis, saying what are the trends in the industry.
Another question back here. Sir, state your name and your question.
CJ Seastat with Internship Desk. How have your strategies or Ford's strategies changed in regards to the growing consumer markets internationally?
So we spent a lot of time looking at emerging markets. In 2005, I think Goldman Sachs coined the term BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, in response to what are the biggest opportunities for growth in the marketplace. And fortunately, Ford has a great presence in all four of those markets. If you follow the news, you can see Ford has done heavy investment in terms of manufacturing plants, education and training in these markets to kind of make sure that we are where the opportunity for growth exists. But we also have to be careful because Goldman Sachs has then come out with something that they call the Next 11. So it's no longer the BRIC countries, but what are the 11 other countries after that? Mexico, the Philippines, Vietnam. They'll also have the greatest opportunity for growth. Our challenge is trying to globalize our platforms so that we have economies of scale and efficiency, and so that Ford has a consistency of brand, so it means the same thing around the world. But we have to do it in a local context so that we make sure that we're still very aware of what's the relevance to a local consumer that might live in a marketplace where gridlock is quite great. Beijing, for one, is a city that has a daily commute of 5 hours a day. I mean, it's untenable, unimaginable. So we have to kind of rethink our strategy as opposed to what we might do in the great wide open highways of the U.S. I guess in Chicago your highways aren't that open, but still better than Beijing.
We have another question over here. This gentleman.
Okay. My question is, what Ford is doing in terms of electrical vehicle, and electrical vehicle are a real alternative to the pollution and to the gas consumption? Because I doubt that if we burn gas in order to turn electrical power and to charge our batteries in the vehicles, we don't go anywhere. The real point is to take energy, solar energy, transform in electrical. That's why probably the reason we don't see so many electrical car on the marketplace.
So the question about electric vehicles brings to mind an even bigger question: is what will be the power source of the future? A couple of years ago, we heard lots of discussion about what's peak oil, when will we hit peak oil, how long can we rely on fossil fuels? We don't know the answer to that. And because we can't know the answer to that, Ford has adopted a parallel path of innovation. So we are investing in electric, we're investing in hybrid, we're investing in diesel, but we're also trying to improve the traditional gas engine. We think that there are great efficiencies that can be done just with what we already have. And that's why we introduced something called the EcoBoost engine. And in my non-engineering mind, the way I understand it works is that it's like a V6 engine. It's a V6 engine that performs like a V8 engine. You can increase the power, the efficiency, but lower the fuel consumption. And we'll continue to invest in that. In back, relating back to the question in back about the different regions, even if we figure out, master one of these, we always know that the solutions will be regionally focused. So Brazil, for instance, with lots of sugarcane and its resources, is that ethanol will always be part of our fuel plan, our fuel strategy. China's been very clear in saying that our strategy is going to be electric. So we have to be very clear on how we go to market so that we're ready, so that we're hedging our bets. I think furthermore, though, if you listen to some of the things Bill Ford has said, which are really inspirational, Bill is the great-grandson of Henry Ford. And 2 years ago, he spoke at a TED conference, which stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design, if you're not familiar with it. He stood before an audience of 1,000 captains of industry, political heads of state, the most the smartest, the brightest, the most innovative inventors in the world. And he said, I spent the last 30 years of my life thinking how to sell as many cars as possible. But today I actually worry what happens if we sell as many cars as possible. If these population predictions of 9 billion, 10 billion, 11 people are on point, then you could easily imagine seeing 4 billion vehicles on the road. And is that a good thing when you consider the congested roads that we have today? And so he said, we need to think of ourselves as not just a manufacturer of automobiles, but enablers of mobility. And that means that we'll look for multimodal solutions that include mass transportation, includes bike rentals, car rentals, pedestrian walkways. So a whole different mindset about how we might play a role in the mobility space.
Sheryl, anyone who's driven around Chicago knows what 4 billion cars on the road looks like at rush hour. So, can I ask a quick question before we get to, I know there's some other hands up here. You haven't said anything yet about one of the things that seems to be on the automotive horizon, and that is driverless vehicles, or vehicles that are using sensors in the roadways, particularly on well-traveled routes that are highly commuted, so that you take out the human factor, so to speak.
Sure.
What kind of work are you doing on that, and is that something that we'll see in our lifetimes to any significant degree?
So I think of this question on a spectrum. On the far end of the spectrum is autonomous driving vehicles. A vehicle where I can jump into the passenger seat, go to sleep, and have the car take me to my destination and wake me up when I get there. On the other end of the spectrum is automated features, and that is where Ford is concentrating its energy right now. And these products are on the road today. I mean, to a certain degree, they are autonomous features. But we are adopting a strategy that keeps the driver in control of the vehicle. We still think that human factor is vitally important, at least for the midterm. And so today we have a feature called Active Park Assist, and I think it's ideal for a city like Chicago because I have driven these streets and know how few and precious a parking spot can be. So imagine you're driving on the road and you see a spot, but you're not sure that your car can fit into that little bitty space, but you're desperate to try. Well, if you have Active Park Assist, you can push the button on your car and it uses the sensors on the outside of the car to measure the distance. Is this space large enough to accommodate your vehicle? And once your car says yes it is, you can take your hands off the wheel and the car will park itself. You operate just from the brake and it'll slide you into that parking spot. So that's the type of features that we're looking for, things that enhance the engagement, improve the functioning and engagement with the vehicle. We have things like adaptive cruise control. So if I'm on the highway traveling 75 miles an hour and the car in front of me slows to 65 and I don't notice, my car is constantly censoring that distance and it'll automatically adjust my cruise control to keep that maintain that same distance that I have with the car in front of me. The technology exists. I mean, Ford introduced traffic jam assist in Europe last year as a prototype. And it says using these sensors, these two technologies, we have the ability to let someone drive hands-free, feet-free when they're stuck in a traffic jam. The question isn't so much about the capability of technology. It's actually much broader than that. It gets into societal issues in terms of government regulation, legal issues in terms of liability, security issues in terms of IT infrastructure. So there are lots of things that it's not just about the technology.
That's good. I was worried about the car that takes the husband to the jewelry store against his will. You guys seen that one? I think we had some other questions. Let me go back here for a sec.
I'm Bev Payanessa, and I'm a member of the Transportation Committee here at the club. And I'd like to ask, which of the trends that you mentioned would be specifically used here in the Chicago market, if any?
So I didn't get to talk about it specifically, but out of the 13 trends for 13, one of my favorite ones that I think is most relevant to Chicago is the intimate city. And so we live in a country that for the first time is seeing more city dwellers than rural dwellers. We've never seen that before. It's been a reality for Chicago for quite some time. And Chicago is still growing, maybe not by leaps and bounds, but it's still, your population for year over year shows a slight upward trend. Well, conventional wisdom says that people live in the suburbs for security, for wide open spaces, for a neighborly feeling, and that you live in the city for convenience, for culture, but you have to sacrifice things like community, like safety. What's interesting is that cities like Chicago are responding by creating a really intimate environment. And I can't think of a better place to think about that than right here at the Union League. That you guys live in a major city of Chicago, but you gather on a regular basis and feel connected. And it's that same sort of small town values. You all have the same vision about engaging community and doing civic duty, being on the forefront of that conversation. It's that sort of connection that's finding its way into urban settings that are rather unique. We see things like co-ops in places like Brooklyn, where neighbors come together and they spend 4 hours during their time at a co-op to get a severely discounted price for local produce, locally grown from local farmers, organic produce. But that experience of working side by side, getting to know the people in your neighborhood, is an exciting dynamic that we haven't traditionally seen in city settings. And cities like Chicago are at the forefront of that.
Okay, other questions? Let's see if I can get over here to this gentleman.
Do it that way. Yeah, try not to screw it up. Hi, I'm Mike Sayre. I'm a member of the club. Many moons ago, I actually worked at the Ford Motor Company assembly plant out on Torrance Avenue, and was a member of the UAW. And I will say in the 1970s, you guys had severe quality control problems, but I will tell you that the last car I bought was a Ford Escape, and I love that car. I just love that car. And the other thing I will tell you that while it will parallel park for me, I'm concerned that particularly for my daughter, it will disable her from actually being able to parallel park for herself. But the question I have is, I read somewhere that the major automakers are concerned about the future in part because, like my once obsessed, car-obsessed son, he now doesn't want to own a car. He lives in the city. He's not interested. He doesn't, you know, I had to force him to take my Ford Escape so he can commute to graduate school for a year. And that the real concern is that most kids want to live in cities. The concern for the car companies, they want to live in cities, and they don't want to own a car because it's too much trouble and it's too expensive. So I was wondering, just as a corporate strategy, is Ford moving into, you know, the things that like the Bud company used to be in, mass transit vehicle production and that kind of thing? Is that what Ford sees for part of its future?
Well, your son is not alone in his, for his generation to not be interested in vehicles. It's actually maybe worse than you think. 70% of 16-year-olds don't have their driver's license. So only 3 in 10 have their driver's license. So we're quite worried about this, of course. I mean, the millennial generation is a huge opportunity. At a rate of 11,000 a day, young people turn 16. These should be new customers for us, but only 3 of them are bothering to get their license. And this is down dramatically from what it used to be. And so we asked ourselves, why? What's behind it? Well, it's harder to get your license. That's part of it, but can't be all of it because the numbers are down for 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and 19-year-olds to a much lesser degree, but they're still down. And even if you look from 20 to 30-year-olds, the number of miles that they drive are also down about 8% over the last couple of decades. So we said, well, what is this about? What's beyond it? So the first thing, our first hypothesis is economics. When I took driver's education as a young person, it was free. I did it over the summer at my local high school. As I'm sure you may already know with your son and daughter, it can range anywhere from $200 to $800 to get driver's education for a young person. And then when you go to add that person to your insurance policy, hold on to your wallet. One summer intern told us that his family's premium increased $2,400 a year by having a teen driver on. So that's a major hurdle to overcome. So economics, I think, has to be part of it, but that's not all of it. Because if you came of age in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the car was this iconic symbol of freedom and independence. It was the gateway purchase into adulthood. But today, many young people would say, well, the gateway purchase into adulthood is a cell phone. That's really the embodiment of freedom and independence. And if you're my girls, you say it happens way before you're 16, Mom. So that's that's the other part. So the imagery of what the car stands for isn't quite what it used to be. There are more alternatives in terms of individual vehicle ownership. So you have the L train here. But in public transportation, it's far from robust across the U.S., but it's still better than it's ever been before. And you have rental. So Chicago's a very bike-friendly city. So rent a bike is, there are definitely markets where it is more cumbersome to own and operate a vehicle than it is to just have someone drop you off at the front door. And many of my friends tell me that that have teenage children, that's the only quality time they get with their kids. So they're more than happy to chaperone them from point A to point B just to get a little bit of that quality time. So if that's the reality, how is Ford responding? Well, one thing that we did is 2 years ago, we entered into a partnership with Zipcar. And we said, Zipcar, if you're not familiar, is the rental program. And their strongest foothold happens on college campuses across the country. Historically, if I went to go rent a car at Hertz, Budget Rent-A-Car, any of those, they'd say, you got to be 25 years of age. Well, Zipcar rents to people much younger than 25 years of age, and they use smart technology. So I can do it through my cell phone. I have a monthly membership. I type in that I text a message saying I need a car, and they send me a passcode. If I have a smartphone, I can swipe it on the dashboard to unlock the car. I don't get upsold things like insurance, or get penalized for fuel. And I can rent it for 4-8 hours a day. And the beauty of it is that it has flexibility. So I might want the 2-seater one day. I might need a 7-passenger vehicle for the weekend. So it gives that sort of flexibility. More fundamentally, though, when you think about our products, what we've done is that we know that young people are constantly connected. In fact, one survey says they would rather lose their wallets than lose their cell phone. So this constant connectivity is critical to them. And that's why in 2007, Ford introduced the Sync. And we introduced it on the Ford Focus, which was interesting because at the time, this Bluetooth technology that paired your devices with the audio system wasn't new to the marketplace, but it was only available on luxury or premium products. And Ford introduced it on the Ford Focus, which is a modestly priced vehicle. And it was offered at a $300 option. And it did so well in the marketplace, within the year we decided to put it across the entire portfolio. And today we offer it as standard equipment on some of our vehicles like the Ford Fusion. But what's unique about it is that ours is hands-free and voice activated. And the voice activation part is critical because it keeps your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road and your mind on the drive. So it is designed to make sure that it is seamless. It can read incoming text messages to the driver. You mentioned your daughter, so I want to tell you about MyKey, which is a system that we came out with a couple of years ago for young and new drivers. So parents can program a key that maximizes the speed, that sets a limit that says, I don't want this car to travel over a certain speed. You can send little ding reminders, so as the vehicle accelerates from 50 to 55 to 60 to 65, set a little warning ding so your child knows that their speed is escalating, and that it's that little, like, I'm worried about you in their ear. It disables the radio if the seatbelt is not engaged. So all these things designed to give a little bit more peace of mind.
The question that I have is, you touched on the role of communication outside of Ford in your work in the Futurist strategy. How, could you talk a little bit about the role of communicating outside with consumers and stakeholders and how that's helping you with your feedback loop with the work that you're doing? It sounds like you've migrated from doing it internally and having the people on the inside so that you can keep your thoughts and secrets where you can contain them for a while. And things are changing. So can you talk a little about that?
Sure. So we have always engaged outside experts. We just would make them sign non-disclosure. We've had some really fascinating experts come in. One of my favorite is a man named Jaron Lanier. And Jaron is famous for having been a pioneer in the development of the glove that supports virtual reality. And so when we want to know what's on the horizon for technology possibilities, he's a great person to push the boundaries for us. He actually said to us in one workshop, he said, mankind evolved in a way that they stand upright and they walk on 2 legs. We don't roll. So there must be some instinctive advantage. So could you imagine a future where you have a car with 4 legs instead of 4 wheels? That's not on our product development cycle. But he's the kind of guy that pushes the status quo. We had someone else who was involved in a political presidential campaign to help us understand the dynamics of politics. We had someone from that was the equivalent of the German EPA director to kind of help us understand what they're concentrating on. So we know that no one of us is smart as all of us, and so we try to engage the people that we think are the brightest, the most innovative, the most provocative, the most remarkable. We also believe in social media. We have a really strong social media presence that helps us have a platform for that dialogue to enable it. Scott Monty is the head of our social media work, and I tell him, if I had $1 for every time someone asked me if I knew Scott, I wouldn't have to stand up here and give you this presentation. I'd be a very wealthy woman. But it just goes to show how visible he is. He is the face of Ford in the social media space. 2-3 weeks ago at the Consumer Electronics Show, we announced 2 really interesting programs. The first was called the Ford App Developer Program. And so we have these Bluetooth devices that we bring into the car, and we announced some partnerships. One was with USA Today. So USA Today, you can do the USA Today app and have the headlines and stories read to you through your car audio system through a human voice, not through a computerized, synthesized voice, but through a human voice. We have another partnership with an organization called Glimpse, because one of the things that people do when they dare to text and drive, which is, of course, very dangerous, and we don't recommend it, but people often text and say how soon they'll arrive. I'm on my way, I'm 10 minutes away, I'm 5 minutes away. With Glimpse, you use GPS information, and it automatically sends that text message to the people that you list that tells them how soon you are going to arrive, how close you are to your destination. But we know these apps are going to change engagement with cars, and there are other apps that we have no idea. And so we've opened this platform for people to submit app ideas. Our goal is not to get a lot more apps. Our goal is to get better apps, more relevant apps, relevant to the act of driving and being in your car, what kind of information you need to know. The second thing we did is called OpenXC, and this is about future hardware innovation. And so we are giving out proprietary information about the systems in the vehicle, the engineering architecture, and we're sharing it so that people can come to us with innovations for vehicles. And we know that this will increase our innovation cycle and help us bring vehicles and features to market faster.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.